So, I have been challenged, requested, persuaded to build Mech Titan. So this is Alabaster Titan plus Mechazor. Surprise, surprise. The rough approach I went when building this deck, I've put all the mechs in, although I've only put in 2 of the chassis because it's a bit less good than the others. So it's 14 mechs. I've gone for a lower curved take on the archetype in general. I've tried to put in as much kind of cheap, efficient draw as I can, so we've got Spelljammers and stuff. And then we have Mechazor itself and Titan as finishes. I don't really know if this deck is going to be particularly good. I played a game with it. I won. But I decided to leave the bulk of the discovery to the stream because we can develop it together. I also feel like it might not actually be that interesting to play, so I wanted to make sure that I could get the fun bits on camera, and then if I get bored of it afterwards I can just delete it after releasing it to the wild. So, core of the deck, we have 3 Helm of Mechazor, 3 Wings of Mechazor, 3 Cannon of Mechazor, 3 Sword of Mechazor, and 2 Chassis of Mechazor. So as I mentioned earlier, that's 14 mechs, which gives you a decent consistency of finding them. The chassis is clunky, or is the most clunky. They're all a little bit clunky, but the chassis is the most clunky, so I've only gone for 2 copies there. I feel like if this card could be targeted by your own spells, it would actually be really good. As it is, it's a bit awkward. You can't buff it. You take advantage of that. A 5/4 untargetable is quite good sometimes, but usually it just dies on board to trades. So 2 copies is probably about right. For the draw package, we've got Spelljammers. 3 Spelljammers, the easiest way to add draw to basically anything that's lowish curve or fast. We are being reasonably proactive. We want some cheap draw. Spelljammer is the most reliable. I didn't put in Sojourner because, although I like Sojourner, she is quite easy to interact with. And normally if you're playing like a control deck and you've got Sojourners for draw and your opponent kills it or dispels it, that's fine. You like they attack it and you draw a card, at least it's cycled, or they dispel it, that uses up their dispel, so you've traded 1 for 1 and you've still got a 1/5 body, or a 1/3 or whatever after a chromatic gold. But we're not doing that. We're not interested in trading resources. We're going to be putting these crappy undersized bodies on the board and trying to dig for more of them and make sure that we don't lose out on the fact that these creatures mostly trade quite poorly if the opponent gets to attack them. So Spelljammer is the way to go. She's got a sizable body to help make up for the tempo loss of getting a mech killed. She draws immediately. She's the most reliable. And if she dies straight away, you get some card advantage. And she's not too easy to kill as a 3/5. I've also put in Sunwisps. I actually really rate this card. It's not every day that you have a use for it. In most Lionheart decks, the fact that it doesn't cost a card is made up for by the fact that when it dies, your opponent usually gets to kill it for the free or on the extremely cheap. And the amount of tempo you lose is considerable. Like if this is your turn 1 play and they go, 3-drop Bloodtear Alchemist and kill it, you're far enough behind that can quite easily cost you the game, or at least have you on the back foot very quickly, despite the fact that in theory, if you can kill the Bloodtear Alchemist with your face, you get to draw a card. Well done you. In this deck, however, we want the deck cycling power. It's a good way to cheaply spend our mana and dig through the deck for combo pieces, for extra draw, and for Alabaster Titan itself. So Sunweb's actually ideal here because we're not too worried about trying to stick a Azurite Lion or whatever. Our plan is mainly to combo out, basically, to get one of the combo pieces into play, or to stick some kind of minion that draws us cards. To go with that, I've included Bloodtear Alchemist and Azure Herald as probably the most good stuffy early plays the deck gets. I've not been too impressed with the typical Lionheart 2-drops in normal Titan, because without the spells to support them, even as good as Windblade Adept and Azurite Lion are, they get a lot worse when you can't protect them with Lasting Judgment, use Holy Immolation with them, that sort of thing. So instead I want 2-drops that do something, that contribute to the overall plan rather than just being, this is a decent creature. So Bloodtear Alchemist is removal, and cheap removal at that, and Azure Herald keeps us alive, which is really valuable because there's a lot of aggro in the meta right now. There's a lot of burst. So being able to heal 3 is really good. Similarly, I went for Silver Guard Knight as a 3-drop. This card is one of the most tempo-positive cards in the game for its mana cost. It protects you, it attacks well because it dictates trades with its large size and provoke. And sometimes it'll, eat up a Dispel or whatever, which is quite valuable because we have Mechazor, so forcing the opponent to choose between Ephemeral Shrouding this and potentially doing it to Mechazor later is kind of valuable. We have Lightbender. Speaking of Dispel, Lightbender is another high-impact generalist card that I think is also really well placed right now. Like, loads of decks playing really good Lightbender targets. We've got Obelisks, we've got Desolators, we've got Luminous Charge, all this sort of massive Dispel bait seeing play. So I think Lightbender is the best Dispel card in the game on balance. Like, EMP is a bit clunky and doesn't dispel creep tiles. Ephemeral Shroud is very low impact as a card by itself. Whereas Lightbender is a nice mix. You can dispel multiple things. You get a decent body that doesn't just die to a general hit. This thing can go face for 6. That's pretty good. Sunset Paragon, same thing again. This is a really good tempo card, a good defensive card, some card advantage. Again, we're not really looking to play for card advantage here, but the fact that this thing can deal with multiple enemy minions for one card and in one turn is really good because that helps us make up for the deficit inherent in the rest of the cards we're playing. So Paragon, I think Paragon is like basically an auto-include in Titan from what I've seen of the deck so far. It's one of the best. Paragon is kind of quietly one of the better cards in the game. I think I was saying to Katie a little while ago that Primus Shieldmaster is a really, really good card that no one ever plays because, although the card is great, there's things that are better, things that are more strategically fitting. Whereas Primus, it's just generic good stuff. I think Sunset Paragon falls into that same bucket. Like, it's the best 5-drop that people don't play very much, and you end up playing it in Titan because you can't play Holy Immolation, you can't play normal spells, so the Paragon gets a slot all of a sudden. And the fact that this card can kill, you can get some damage in on a golem, like a Hailstone Golem, that lets you trade into it while also killing like a 7/7. It's just ludicrous, like the amount of swing you can get from it. And the fact that your opponent has to walk over and take 3 to get rid of it isn't bad either. We have Solarius. I've been quite impressed with this card in my playing with it in normal Titan so far. And it has the seal of approval from Mizilji, who is a much better player than I am. And I think I kind of want to try this more, because I've always thought this card should be great, and I've never really found a reason to play it until now. So I think Solarius, normally this would be a Trinity Oath, right? You play Spelljammer and Trinity Oath in your Mech Argent deck, and that would be the end of it. Obviously, we can't have Trinity Oath in this deck, so Solarius is kind of a good substitute. Draws 2 straight away, gives you a body that can do some stuff, I guess, but mostly your opponent has to kill it. So if you can hide your Solarius, you can draw extra cards the next turn as well. And then finally, of course, we have Titan. I think playing Titan and Mechazor together is quite nice because Mechazor decks need some kind of backup win condition. I cut my teeth in Duelyst playing with a Mech Vitruvian deck that had... It was like, this was, my basic, like, newish player deck. I got to Diamond with it, kind of thing. It was quite powerful, don't get me wrong, but I don't know, I don't know if I'd take it to a tournament. But the way that worked was I had Mechazor and I also had pump spells. First Wish, Second Wish were, and I think I had Cosmic Flesh in there as well, were great ways to make the crap mechs into good cards. So the plan A was actually to stick a Pyromancer or a Cannon of Mechazor and buff it. I think this might have been when Primus Fist gave a permanent bonus as well. I'm not entirely sure when that was changed. And then plan B was to use Mechazor. And your opponent would have to respect Mechazor so they might save their removal or play differently around the buffs. So it worked together nicely. So we can do exactly the same thing here. We can play Mechazor and the opponent spends their turn dealing with it, and then we play Alabaster Titan and we just crash in with whatever crap we've got left over, plus Arjun himself, and sit there with an Arclight Regalia up, a 7/7 force field in play, all happy. So that's the plan. Let's see how it works out.